Hello and welcome to the Informed Decision Seminar. This is Senior Master Sergeant Jena with the 2nd Force Support Squadron. I'm the Career Assistance Advisor here at Barksdale Air Force Base. Thank you for being here at the Informed Decision Seminar. Since this is an online video, in order to get credit, there are certain instructions you're going to have to follow. So the expectations as we're going through this are to watch the whole video in its entirety, take notes or screenshots or pictures or somehow to capture the information as you're going through it. And there are 4 questions that you're going to have to answer for course credit. So write down the questions or take screenshots or something so that you can answer those and then send me an email at the end. There will be instructions at the end of the course of the seminar. So this is a quick overview of what we're going to go over for the next hour. We're going to talk about why you're here, why it's important, and then we're going to have some guest speakers to cover VA benefits, the Palace Front and Chase programs with the Air National Guard or the Reserves, and then the TAP program with Airman Family Readiness. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on your pay and entitlements, like what I like to call our compensation package. And then we're just going to quickly go over some other entitlements and personnel programs to make sure you're aware of when you're eligible for them. So to begin, why are we here? Well, because you have to be, just like I am. It is required, and it's congressionally mandated that you attend the Informed Decision Seminar 12 to 15 months prior to your date of separation as a first-term and second-term airman. And this is just to make sure you have all of the information up front about what you have while you're in and what you won't have while you're out so that you can make the best decision for you and your family individually. It's not up to your supervisor, not up to your work center. This is an individual decision that you need to make with your family. And it's because a lot of people might hear that the grass is greener on the other side. Well, it's not always greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. And it may look greener over there, but once you get there, you realize it might be astroturf. So we have to actually make sure we know what is on the other side. Maybe you have friends that got out because something was going on, or they thought that they had a good plan and it fell through, and now the grass is no longer greener. It's like a valley of dead grass. So what are some reasons that people stay in the military? Probably for a lot of the same reasons that people join. So if you look back, why did you join the Air Force? If we were in person, I would go around and ask every person to introduce yourself and explain why you joined the military. So just think back about it. What was your reason? And did you fulfill that reason? Is it still there? Did it fall through? Did it work out? Did you meet your goals? Okay, so why do people leave the military? Just look at the options that are on here, the reasons that are on here. These are the top reasons that I hear. There are other reasons, of course, but just look at those and think about what you think the top reason would be that people actually leave the military. So if you said leadership, you're correct. Even though you might not write that on paper, that is the #1 reason that I hear people leave the Air Force. And if that is the reason for you, if you're considering leaving it, if it's because of leadership, I just want to just quickly say not to give other people power over your decisions. This is an individual decision, whether you're going to re-enlist or separate. And if you allow people, it could be your supervisor, maybe one other person, or your entire chain of command that's perhaps toxic leadership, perhaps just you don't get along. But if you separate because of them, you are actually giving them control over this family and personal decision. So we come to our first question, and this is one you're going to have to put in the email that you sent me. Are you planning to re-enlist, separate, or are you undecided? I get a lot of people that put down I'm extending. Well, that wasn't really one of the options. So to continue, if your answer is that you're extending, how long is the extension and what are your plans for after the extension is over? All right, I would now like to turn it over to Mr. Dunnings, our VA benefits advisor at Barksdale.
Hello, I'm Liam Dunnings. I'm the Barksdale Air Force Base's VA Benefits Advisor. I'm here to give you all the information that you will need for disability compensation claims, educational benefits, VA healthcare, life insurance through the VA, and VA home loans, and I will also show you how to navigate through the different VA websites. I'm located at the Colonel DePizer the Peisler Building, and my office hours are 0730 to 1600, Monday through Fridays. And you can call or email me to set up a one-on-one appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunnings. I'm now going to turn it over to Ms. Roberts from the Airman Family Readiness Center to cover the Transition Assistance Program.
Thank you, Senior Master Sergeant Brooks. Again, my name is Wanda Roberts. Hello, everyone. I am the TAP manager here at Barksdale Air Force Base. So many of you have heard about the Transition Assistance Program, and we call it TAP for short. And what it is, sorry about that. It is a program that helps you fully transition back into the civilian sector. We walk through different resources and give you information and tools to help you to make your transition smoother. Okay, so with the new NDA 19 requirements, there are 4 components to the TAP program. Okay, you have your initial counseling, your pre-separation counseling, your 3-day transition workshop, and your capstone appointment. So the initial counseling and the pre-separation briefing, those 2 components are mandated to be completed no later than 365 days prior to your date of separation. That's right. So that means that when you are about 14 to 18 months from your date of separation, you will be contacted by one of our staff to schedule your initial counseling and your pre-separation briefing. After those 2 components are complete, you will have your 3-day transition workshop. And in that workshop, you will receive your DoD transition day, which composes of, which is your financial briefing, your financial briefing, resiliency briefing, your mock crosswalk, where we just look at what your skills are that you attained in the military, and then we look at we explore some civilian opportunities, and then we kind of walk you through that to see what the process is to make it smoother for you to transition out of the military. And then the last day is the DOL employment workshop. So if you're interested in going back into the workforce, then the DOL representative comes and give you all kind of good information, tools and resources to help you develop your resume, of how to conduct an interview and things of that nature, okay? And then last but not least is your capstone appointment, and that's the culmination of the process. And at the capstone appointment, everyone will have a little bit of homework depending on what tier you fall in. And we'll get into details with that once you attend TAP. So don't worry yourself with those details at this time. Okay, so this is what it looks like for the core curriculum for the 3-day workshop. It's the DoD transition day. VA benefits and services is going to be on the 2nd day of TAP, and then the DOL employment workshop on the 3rd day. The exceptions are you can be exempt from the DOL employment workshop only if you are a 20-year service member, if you serve 20 years and you are retiring. Okay, so just a bit of information. So recently they just changed the requirements. All requirements are now good for 4 years from the date of completion. And going through the TAP process does not lock you into separation, okay? In fact, many people change their mind while they're in TAP. The goal is to bring you in early so that you can start thinking about what you're gonna do once you transition out of the military, because everyone will have to transition at some point in time. And we just give you the opportunity to start planning ahead of time. Now, if you're not ready, you'll know when you go through TAP. And then, like I said, a lot of people do re-enlist and they stay in. the military because they are not prepared to separate, and that's no problem. Again, the requirements are good for 4 years, so as long as you complete, or as long as you separate before your 4 years, then you won't have to complete the TAP process again. But worst thing that can happen is if you re-enlist and you go past 4 years, then you'll just have to renew your requirements. So it's not a problem. Okay, so here is a picture of our 2-day additional tracks. We offer our employment track every month, and we offer the DoD education track, the vocational track, and the entrepreneurship track quarterly. We do have a transition calendar, and we'll be able to give you all that information on when these classes are being held. Okay, so this is a timeline, and this kind of helps you understand how the process works. Again, the IC, which is the individual transition, initial counseling, the pre-separation counseling, those mandates or those components are mandated to be completed prior 365 days prior to your date of separation. And then the capstone appointment is required to be completed no later than 90 days prior to your date of separation. And then your TAP 3-day workshop is scheduled between those 2 dates. Okay. If you are interested in taking the 2-day additional tracks, then they must be completed prior to your capstone appointment. If you have the time left, if you're not within 90 days, you need to complete the 2-day workshops before your capstone appointment so that we can annotate that information, the extra education, on your DD 2648. Okay, so this is an overview of our transition team. Although I am the TAP manager right now, Mr. Frank DeVilliers is going to be taking over as the TAP manager. Mr. Kevin Pike and Miss Anita Harper are the TAP team members, and Miss Beverly Riles is the Employment Assistance Program Manager. And so she partners with the TAP team to help you if you have any additional questions on resumes or in anything employment related. Our contact information is on the screen, and you give us a call, 456-8400. Again, if you're within that 12 to 18 month window, please, please, please give us a call, because our classes fill up and we don't want you to fall under that window. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Roberts. I really appreciate it. That was all really good information. Next, we're going to give the computer over to Master Sergeant Randall. He is our in-service recruiter for the Air National Guard.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, I'm Master Sergeant Randall, in-service Air Guard recruiter. I'm here today to talk about the program. If you do decide to separate from the military, just to give you some options as far as your transition goes, just to give you a little bit of information about the program and see if it's applicable to you. First, who are we? We're federally, state, and community funded. We have a federal mission, we have a state mission, and we have a community mission. So we cover a large area of responsibility. As far as benefits, just a few to throw out there. You keep a lot of your federal benefits when you join the Air National Guard. You know, you get to pick your duty station, you can retrain. We have state-to-state did so if you did move in with your civilian job, we're located in every single state. So if you did have to move, you would always have a location wherever you move to. We also have part and full-time positions. A lot of people don't realize that the Air Guard is basically 30% active. So you also receive a supplemental income, basically, you know, just for average, you know, E5 that's been in about 6 years is going to be roughly making about $400 a month just for their 2 days a month. We have federal and state benefits. So as far as your federal benefits, you know, you have space available. You can still use military resorts, you know, if you're on vacation. You can use the outdoor recreation. You can use space available. There's a lot of different things that you can use as far as your state benefits or your federal benefits. But what's unique about the Air Guard is we also have state benefits. So that's especially huge if you're looking at attending school when you separate, because a lot of our states are 100% tuition assistance. So that's huge that you can use your Montgomery GI Bill in addition to already having your tuition paid for by the state. Medical insurance, a lot of people will join just because of that. You know, I have a lot of members tell me they do their research, as Ms. Roberts stated, you know, have a plan when you separate. They would do the research and realize their civilian job. I've heard up to like $800 a month for a family medical plan. So a lot of members will just join just to have the TRICARE benefits alone. So if you do separate either Palace Chase or Palace Front, you do receive those benefits free for 6 months. And then after that, you just go on our monthly premium, which is pretty low. And then if you go on orders for anything 30 days or more, again, after that, once you come off those orders, your 6 months of TAP and benefits starts over again for an additional 6 months. So that's a huge benefit right there. You also get to maintain your SGLI. So like I said, when members are separating out, just to have their medical insurance and life insurance, especially if you have a family, is huge. You know, when you go out in the outside sector and you're pursuing either, you know, your civilian job or you're looking at just being a full-time student, you know, having those benefits are, you know, huge when you separate. Also your retirement, you know, if you've been in 6, 18 years, whatever the case may be, you'll be able to add that time onto, you know, getting a retirement. Even if you just do it part-time, you still have some retirement that you can retire from the military as well. So no testing for rank, no higher tenure. And we also right now for 2021, our bonuses have gone up to $30,000. I mean, even for popular career fields like security forces, mental health, a lot of career fields are offering a $30,000 bonus right now. So that's obviously huge as well, you know, when you're looking at separating. Like I said, you get to choose your location. We're in every state and all the territories. We have 140 locations total. So we have a lot of options out there for you. And again, you do get to do a state-to-state transfer. Again, like I said, we have part-time, full-time AGR positions. We also have federal tech positions where you're a civilian employee and you're also a traditional guard member. So you can have up to 2 retirements, 2 incomes. So those are definitely great gigs as well. Your commitment, you can range anywhere from 1 to 6 years. A lot of people usually just pick the 2 years when they're separating. It's like I said, it's broken down to 39 days a year. So when you break it down that much, usually the commitment's not a huge deal because even if you do 2 years, you know, it's still less than 100 days for 2 years. So you know, especially if you're a full-time student or your civilian job or whatever, you know, that's you know, a great program for somebody. The trial one, like I said, we do have the trial one for select AFSCs. You can just get out and do it for a year. How to apply, there's 2 different ways. Obviously, we have the Palace Front, and that's basically if you're within 180 days of your data separation, we'll start working with a state unit to get you a position, to get you linked up with that, whatever state you're looking at going. And then we also have the Palace Chase. The regular Palace Chase right now, you know, you have to complete half your contract. And it's 2 for 1 for enlisted and 3 for 1 for officers. But obviously right now, the big thing right now is the expanded Palace Chase. So if you qualify for that, then the time requirements are off the table. You know, you just basically get with me or the reserve recruiter, and we'll be able to walk you through. We'll be able to send you everything that you need to apply for that program. Again, here's my contact information. You can reach me by email, cell phone, and let me know if you have any questions. As far as the Air Reserve recruiter, Sergeant Frasca, here's his information. You know, a little bit about their program is basically as far as the 1 week in the month, 2 weeks of deal is basically set up the same as far as that goes. The federal benefits and everything that I mentioned, you'll be able to receive those as well with the Air Reserve. So they're both good programs. Would definitely look into it, you know, if you're looking at separating. The differences, some of the differences is with the Air Guard, we do have a lot more locations and we're obviously in every single state. Like I said, we both do have federal benefits, but the Air Guard does have the state benefits as well. So it's huge if you're looking at going to school. We do have a little bit more full-time positions as well, since we're state and federally funded. And then the Air Reserve, you know, they're really more in line with active duty, really, as far as their mission and everything goes. So, but if you have any questions, please contact me, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Randall. All right, so question number 2 that needs to go in the email that you send me for course credit. When are separating or undecided personnel required to attend pre-separation with Airman Friendly Readiness Center? And if you are planning to separate or are undecided, have you attended or are you scheduled for pre-separation? All right, so it's my turn. We're going to go over our compensation package, like I said. In the military, we call it pay and entitlements. However, in a civilian organization, they would refer to it as a compensation package. So I like to use that for this briefing. So I'm going to go over our actual pay and entitlements, starting with the timeline of our pay scales, basically, and then what we actually get paid, so that you're aware of what, I know what you know what you get paid right now, but what it would look like in the future. So to start off, we begin with the senior airman at 4 years. By then, you should be a senior airman, and you should be out of the dorms if you're in them now. So the annually is just our base pay. That's what that means. And then the W/O is without, and then dependent rate, BAH is our housing, and BAS is our food allowance. So that says without dependent rate, BAH and BAS, and then with dependent rate. So that's the difference between the two different lines. So we're going to do that for each of the ranks as we go up. So senior airman at 4 years out of the dorms is now receiving BAH. Even if you live in base housing, or if you have an apartment, you're still getting BAH. But if you live in housing, they're just taking that BAH to pay the contract for your base house. So now we're already at $50,000 or more after being in for just 4 years. So look back at the requirements for when you joined the Air Force. What were they? It was a high school diploma or GED, meeting the ASVAB requirements for any job really, but specifically the one that you wanted. And then not even a stellar criminal record. So those are the requirements. There were no education requirements or anything. So in this situation, you've been in for 4 years, and we've trained you, we've given you the experience, we've promoted you to senior airman, given you a little more responsibility because we should be able to trust you now to be like a trainer and things like that. So we're compensating you for it. And this again, remember, as we're going through this is just our base pay, housing, and food allowance. So staff sergeant at 8 years, that is extremely attainable if you just apply yourself. Average is probably about 6 years for a staff sergeant, but you can make it right now as early as 4 years. So we're going to use 8 years because if you apply yourself, you should be easily able to make staff sergeant by 8 years. So the annual is there, and then you're already at almost, if not over, $60,000. So there is more responsibility, of course, with each of these ranks, but that's why you get more money as you go up in the ranks, because they're attempting to compensate you for the additional responsibilities. Tech sergeant at 12 years, again, very attainable. Average is probably about 9. I tested for tech 3 times. I'm not the golden child of the Air Force. So I tested for tech 3 times, and I sewed on, I think it was in my ninth year. That's about average as far as what I'm looking at when I'm with people when they put it on. So that's already at or above $70,000. Again, no other education requirements or anything. Where this is just based on coming to work, doing your job to the best of your ability, and applying yourself and meeting requirements. So Master Sergeant at 16 years, again, very attainable. I also tested when we had to test, but I went to the board, I guess, 3 times for Master Sergeant, and I still sewed on around my 13th year. And that was at 13 years, I was making about $80,000. Again, still don't have any other education requirements other than meeting PME and you know, applying yourself at work. All right, so then there comes senior. So this is a 22-year senior. I use myself as an example because other people don't necessarily like it when we talk about them, so I'll do it. So I tested for senior when we had to test twice, and I still sewed on in my 17th year. And again, this was after I didn't make it the first time every time. I only made staff the first time. Every other time it was 2 or 3 times that I went up for promotion. So at 17 years, that was my, well, it was a little less than, just with inflation, but this is as of January. It went up quite considerably for all of the ranks, and now it's at almost $100,000. So that's kind of crazy. And then for chief, this isn't even a 30-year chief. We're over it. We're now at 115, almost 120,000, depending on your family situation. So again, this comes with a lot more responsibility, of course, but this is like I was saying, oh, I'm sorry, you do actually need to have an associate's degree by the time you promote to senior master sergeant. But otherwise, there's still no other requirements other than PME, applying yourself at your job, doing everything to the best of your ability, and at this point, an associate's degree. Your CCAF does count as an associate's degree. So that's not including all the stuff that's on this page. So these are those behind the scenes things that people don't realize, but when you calculate all of it up, it becomes quite a large amount of money. The two asterisk things are included in the monetary amounts on the previous slides, but the rest of these are not. So I really like to talk about our leave program. I talk to FTA about all the time. That is the reason that I re-enlisted at the halfway point. So my 10-year point, I started looking into civilian organizations and like how much time they got off and things like that, because time off is very important to me. I actually like my family. We like to travel. So I really like my time off. It's very important. So the 30 days of paid leave, nothing really came close to it. It was staying with the organization for 2 years and then you might get 2 weeks off. I just couldn't believe it. So 30 days of paid leave on top of federal holidays and our family days and things like that. There was nothing that I could find that compared to it. Convalescent leave is basically our sick leave. We have an unlimited supply of sick days. It's tracked in there as convalescent leave, but there isn't like a maximum amount that you can have. If a doctor says you're going to be off for 2 weeks because you had a surgery or something, then you're off for 2 weeks to rehabilitate. Primary and secondary caregiver leave is our version of maternity and paternity leave, but we don't call it that. So primary caregiver leave is normally going to be given to the birthing parents. So the mother of the child would normally get that. However, if the mother is in a civilian job and they will not allow 6 weeks off for maternity leave, the active duty partner or parent can actually take primary caregiver leave to care for the child, because they can't take the babies to the daycares until they're at least 6 weeks old. So it is possible for a secondary caregiver, active duty secondary caregiver, to take primary caregiver leave if they are not the birthing parents. However, it's normally, like I said, it goes to the mother. So an active duty mother would get 42 days off of leave. It used to be 6 weeks for the longest time, but it's 42 days now. It made a huge difference. I'm going to be honest with my last kid as far as that bonding experience went. Secondary caregiver gets 21 days, and I'm just going to compare that to paternity leave for a second. It was 0 days for fathers only, and they had to be married. There was still 0 days for about 70 years. And then for a couple years, it was 10 days. And again, I'm sorry, that was for fathers only, and they had to be married. The couple had to be married. So now it's no longer like that. It's just the secondary caregiver that's in the relationship. There are still selective reenlistment bonuses. They're not a myth. I know there's not as many now as there were a couple of years ago, but you can go to my PERS, just type in SRB, and you can get the list, and you're going to go by your, it's based on time in service. So whenever group you're in, as far as your grouping, as far as when you're going to be reenlisting, and you can find out if you'll get an allowance. Our clothing allowance we get annually on the anniversary of our initial enlistment. So every every September, I know that I'm going to be getting my clothing allowance. I can count on it. It's very helpful. It was, while we're phasing into OCPs, it was up to about about $550 or so. It was great. I was actually able to go get 2 uniforms, boots, and all of the accessories needed to using that. So I don't think there was any out of pocket other than, using my clothing allowance. But normally it's right around $425 a year. So again, you can count on it. So make sure throughout the year, since they're paying us for our clothing allowance, make sure you are keeping your uniforms up to date. That includes your blues. Make sure they fit. Make sure you have all the accoutrements. Your lapel pins seem to be the #1 thing that's missing. Hats are always lost. I think I have 3 because we continuously lose them. So now I have them, and then we find them when we move. So just make sure that you have, like, all of your uniforms are up to date and ready to go. We talked about our food allowance already. So when it comes to moving, so moving is expensive. So I'm going to talk about PCSing. It can be very expensive. So it's great though, because this is my 6th assignment. And I've never really had to pay much out of pocket. As far as the move itself, I've never paid out of pocket, but depending on like where I was living, there might have been a little bit. But so the military will pay all of the PCS expenses. That means like they're actually going to pay someone to come pack up your house if you want them to. And then another company will come and they'll put all that stuff on a truck or in crates on a truck, and they're going to send it to your next home. It's amazing. All you have to do is basically take the pictures off the wall and paint over some holes. So they do everything else for you. Or you can do a Diddy move, and that is where you do it yourself. So it's called Diddy move, it's a do-it-yourself move. And so the Air Force will pay you as though you are the contractor. So you would be responsible for putting it to, for getting all of your belongings to your next home. But they pay you as though you're the contractor. I had a friend who did this 4 times, and he said he made about $4,000 every time because they're paying him instead of somebody else. But they do pay for that. And then as you're traveling, just like on a TDY, you use your government government travel card to pay for gas, lodging. You can use it for food and all that kind of stuff. Everything related to the actual move itself. And with TDY, that counts, you also get a per diem while you're at the location. You are expected to stay on base if there's availability, but if there's not, you'll get paid for the hotel off base as well, and your per diem will be higher. Otherwise, if you're on base, it is a lower per diem. However, you're still getting your food allowance. So it's just to offset the cost that you might have to eat out a little bit. Permissive TDYs are another option. It's basically leave without having to take leave. It does have to be a reason that's annotated in the AFI. So if you go into the AFI, there's about 40 different reasons that you can take a permissive TDY. So the easiest example is recruiter's assistance, the RAT program. So you would go to whatever recruiting station and you'd work with them for up to 2 weeks. And then you're not on leave, but you do have to pay for all of the expenses, travel and food and lodging and everything is up to you. So you can do it for recruiter's assistance if you're going to have like some elective surgery like LASIK or PRK or something like that. You can go to the nearest military station that does that, and but you have to pay to get there and stay there. But the military will not charge you leave for that. Dislocation allowance is also associated with PCSs. So again, it can be expensive to move, especially when you're in like an apartment and then you have to pay first and last month's rent and all those types of things. Utility deposits, shampooing for your carpets. And if you have a pet, goodness, the shampoo for the pet shampooing is like 4 times the amount. It's kind of crazy. So dislocation allowance is at least $1,500 per move. And at least, it just depends on your rank and where you're going. If you're a dual military family, only one person will get dislocation allowance unless you are PCSing from separate locations. So for example, when my family moved here, my husband was actually stationed in Korea and I was stationed in Virginia. So technically we both PCSed here from different locations. So we were actually able to get dislocation allowance, both of us were. Some bases overseas, you get COLA and utility allowance. Depends on the location as far as how much it will be. And it's the cost of living allowance, and utilities can be really expensive. When I was stationed in Italy, it was very expensive for our electric and gas. So we got an additional stipend for that. And you will use the COLA, it's expensive overseas, but it's great. It really helped offset the difference. So we really didn't feel too much of that increase in cost of everything. Family separation pay is for anyone who's away from their family for more than 30 days due to military reasons. So if you're TDY or you are deployed or you're at a remote location on a short tour and your family can't go with you, you will get you'll get $250 per 30 days. And then they prorate that to $833 a day for every day after the 30 days. So if you don't do a full 2 months, like say it's 6 weeks, like if you're going to NCO Academy or something, they'll prorate it to include the extra couple weeks. Then there's special duty pays, there's hazardous duty pays, and there's a few other different ones too. And not to mention, we do get 100% tuition assistance. So I'm just going to tell you, I got my master's degree finally last year, and I've never had to pay for a class. I found a school that even included books in my tuition, so I didn't even have to pay for a book. The only thing I had to pay ever was a $20 online library fee when I started my bachelor's program. So that's it. So I got a free bachelor's and master's degree. It's amazing. 100% medical coverage. We're going to go over that just briefly here in a minute. And then your retirement. So depending on if you're high 3 or blended, it's 40 to 50%, but all the way up to 75 or 65. So quickly on retirement, I'm not going to cover this too much because most of you probably already knew what you're getting. I don't know if anyone watching this now is still on high 3. Probably not. So I'm not going to cover that too in depth. But if you are, just give me a shout and I'll help you out to figure out what you're doing. But most of you should be in blended by now. So this is what the blended would look like. It started, everybody's gotten this one after 2018, but most people were able to, if you needed to, you could have opted into it. So the blended retirement, actually, it still goes off number of years of service and everything like that. The main difference between this and the top 3 is the percentage of pay after you complete at least 20 years. So instead of 50%, it's 40%, and it's still based off of the last 3 years of service. And then it's still 2.5% more for every year over 20, but the max will then be 65%. However, they do match more. So you actually will get the same, if not more amount, if you start as early as you can and put in as much as you can. So if you can put in that 5% as early as you can, then that's great. You're going to be making more than top 3 would in the long run. Yes, so this came about because they found out that only 14% of members actually retire from active duty. So that's 86% of people that were separating and didn't get anything for their contribution to the Air Force. So now, whether you stay in for 5, 10, 15, 18, whatever, if you were to separate, you at least leave with something, and it helps set you up for retirement in the future. Speaking of becoming a civilian, sometimes it's really hard to figure out what you can do. Like, how does your job relate to the civilian sector? And maybe you have one that's really easy, but not everybody does. So I like to use the 2WOs, our ammo folks, as an example for this, because they build bombs. So how does that relate to the civilian sector? And you're not allowed to say, as a contractor or a GS employee, that's cheating. I mean, like a legit, like just civilian, not affiliated with the military. How does that equate to a civilian sector? So I would encourage you to go to this website. It's a great tool. It's ONET Online. That's how you say that, onetonline.com. And then you can go in here. It has so much information about just how to find a job, where are jobs, what's the market like right now, what would be the best job in this time, things like that. So this crosswalk section that's squared off there in red, you go there and you can actually put in the branch and then put in your AFSC, and it'll give you a whole list of different jobs that might relate to what you do. So different job titles. So even though you're ammo, you're a bomb technician, you're also a supervisor, you're also a safety manager, you're also a trainer. Like, there are so many other things involved than just your core duty. So you can look through each one of these things, and it'll give you a list of responsibilities that you would have had in that specific task. So, and it says, and notice how this is reading. This doesn't look the same as like what it would say in our CFETP or in our classification directories or our military documents. We do not speak civilian. So this right here is in civilian terminology, and this would be very helpful as you're writing resumes. But if you scroll down all the way on each of the pages, it gives you a list of related occupations. So for ammo, for 2WOs, what you would find would be things like, yes, mechanic, of course, supervisor, but it's also going to say logistics, if say supply chain management, warehouse management, because they're not only building, they're also storing and shipping all over the world. This is a comparison. I actually found all of these last January. So this is as of January of 2020. This is the percentage of civilian organizations that offer the same support services that we have in the Air Force. I like to point out the relocation pay is 34%. So 34% will pay for you to move to a different location. It's a huge incentive to get you to go there. But notice that paid family travel expense is only 2%. So great, we'll bring you over here, but you're gonna have to bring your family on your own. Maternity leave is at 34%, and then paternity leave has gone up to 30%. It was at 1% for a very long time. But we also have like all these other different support services, like mental health services, stress management, tobacco cessation. We all learn CPR and first aid. Only 50% of other organizations will pay for CPR and first aid training. Fitness center memberships, we have a global gym membership. Sometimes insurances will pay for fitness center memberships, but as far as organizations go, only 32% do. Tuition assistance, 56% will pay for tuition assistance. It didn't specify how much, if it was 100% or just a stipend. All right, which brings us to question number 3. So please write the answer down to this and include it in that email. Are you interested in attending any professional or leadership development workshops or events? And if so, how would you prefer it be conducted? And you do not limit your answers to what's here. These are just examples. So some examples are virtually. Do you prefer to do it online? Is it more convenient for you? Lunch and learn, just a quick hour, cool, get it done. Let's go back. A full day or days, pre-recorded. Perhaps you'd rather just watch a video like this. Half days, it could be however you want to write it in there. Like, what is the best way for us or that you would prefer we would conduct development workshops and events? All right, so now we're going to briefly cover some medical benefits. And I built some scenarios on like the Blue Cross Blue Shield Louisiana websites, just family scenarios, just to give you an example. So this is one example of hundreds that you could have. So don't get too caught up in the numbers as far as like how many family members and things like that. I do like to point out how much it costs to have a kid. Not only are kids expensive when they're born, but the process of having the kid is also very expensive. So this is the cost of maternity and newborn care. So from the time the mother finds out she's pregnant through the entire maternity process, and then the newborn care before discharge from the hospital. That is what this price is covering. And this is based on national averages. It isn't one specific insurance program or anything. This is just a national average as of 2013, as cited in a 2011, as cited in a 2013 article. So I don't know if you have $10,000 set aside, to have a child, but that's a lot of money. And then that's out of pocket expenses. That's not like what the insurance is going to cover. And then you only have a few hundred. It's $10,000 out of pocket expenses. So if you found out today that you're going to have a child, do you have 10,000, or would you be able to obtain $10,000 within the next 9 months? I just don't know that a lot of people would be able to do that. And then imagine having twins, just crazy. And then remember, this is for healthy pregnancy, healthy baby, healthy mom, everything. So just as an example, I had a friend who had twins, and most twins are born a little early. Hers were 2 months early, so they were in the NICU for 2 months, and it was $100,000 per child per month. But she didn't, of course, have to pay any of that. She's, active duty military. All right, so I built a scenario of just one 18-year-old male, healthy guy, non-smoker, no pre-existing problems in Bossier. I used the Bossier City zip code. So the monthly cost he would have, just in case something happened, he would be paying $330 a month. And then he would have to have a $4,500 set aside as an annual deductible, just in case there was something catastrophic, like he broke an arm or something like that. So I like to ask people when we're in person. I said specifically to males in the room, when you were 18, how many times did you go to the doctor? To date, I have had only one person say, I went to the doctor once because I had a sports physical. Like, okay, that's fair. I don't feel like that counts, but that's fair. So one person so far. All right, so now 18-year-old male grows up. He is now adulting. 35-year-old male with a 35-year-old wife, still both non-smokers, and they have 2 kids, ages 3 and 5. So now they have a family cost, and this is going to be over $1,000 a month. Yes. And then there's still that $4,500 deductible, but that is per person. So they have to have that set aside in case there's a catastrophic event, such as breaking arms or something like that. And kids hurt themselves, just going to be honest. So just an example, you can go around and play in there as much as you want to. Find a different company if you want to, or a provider. I had to pick one, and I built a scenario. So this doesn't necessarily mean this would be yours. The point here is that insurance is very expensive, medical is very expensive. All right, so now we're going to talk about some local services and facilities that we have at nearly every Air Force installation. And I say nearly because not all of them have every single thing on here, but even the Camp Darby, Italy is a tiny little Army post that I was at in Italy that had 200 active duty, including Army, still had everything on here except a skeet and trap range because we weren't allowed to have guns. Everything else was still there. So Airman Family Readiness, you got to hear from them this morning, but they have a whole bunch of other services, including the Exceptional Family Member Program. The Education Office is there. They also discuss the Skill Bridge Program. If you'd like to discuss an internship to leave up to 6 months early to do an internship in transition to civilian life. Arts and Crafts in the Frame Shop. I still get a lot of my gifts there, especially if you want to get things for family that aren't military, if they think the B-52 is pretty cool, if you didn't know that. So you can go get some cool arts and crafts things there, etched even. The Auto Hobby Shop, I believe it's about $7 to rent a lift if you need to tinker. And then we do have the club, the Buff Event Center, things like that. Our fitness center, like I said before, we have a global gym membership. You can use, if you have access to the installation, you have access to the facilities. So even when, like, we were staying in Pensacola for something and it was raining and I wanted to go for a run, so I actually went to the Naval Station and used their fitness center so I could use their treadmill. We have 2 pools on base here. There's one over in East Res, and then there's the really awesome one that's associated with the club, has 4 awesome slides. And then you can actually get a season pass if you want to. It's a lot cheaper, but otherwise it's usually about $3. Last summer it was free all summer. Outdoor Rec has everything that ends in ing, so hiking, fishing, camping, canoeing, kayaking, bicycling, everything, like everything that could possibly be outside. They have equipment and ways to get you to be able to do that activity. They also do trips, sometimes free single airman trips. Other times it's just a very low amount to pay to go on a trip to go do one of those activities. You can rent all that stuff too, as well as industrial equipment. You can rent lawnmowers, wood chippers, anything like for outdoor use, basically, including floor buffers. So just check that out. They have a huge hangar over there that you can go look through. And also the bowling alley is there. And then if you have airmen with meal cards, they work at the bowling alley too. And it's they're less used than the one-off base. If you try to go to the one-off base, it's just packed. So we still go to the one-off base. The vet is actually run by the Army. I believe we have a vet here right now. It's a lot cheaper than off base as well, and really good care. We have a paintball course. It's run by Outdoor Rec. You just have to contact Outdoor Rec to reserve the course. Skeet and Trap Range is over there near the paintball course. Sometimes they have events, they might have tournaments and things like that. The FAM camp is for tenting all the way through 50 amp services, and they have cabins for rent as well. But so even for full hookups with a camper, it's $20 a night all over the place. They have, like I said, they have them at almost every base. So that's how my family gets around now, because flying is expensive. So we have a camper and we just kind of go from base to base and pay $20 a night. But if you wanted to tent, I believe it's about $4 to $6 a night. Golf course, the Air Force really likes golf. We have usually about an 18-hole golf course in almost every installation. I don't know about overseas. My little Army post, we're Army post, we did not have a golf course, but every base that I've been to stateside has had an 18-hole golf course, sometimes running paths associated with that. Information, tickets, and travel is amazing. If you're going to do anything that has ticketing, I'm not talking about airline ticketing, but anything with like access tickets, you need to talk to ITT first to see what kind of discounts you can get through them. Many of the times when we went, it was about 50% off. It was just crazy. You can get cruises now, and then a 4-day park hopper pass to Disney World is $240. It costs a lot more than that just for a regular 2-day pass if you go through the park. So just a few examples of why you should check out ITT. They also do free single airman tickets sometimes, so just keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, they get free tickets for things like the Mud Bugs in town here do an annual military appreciation night, and they give those tickets to ITT to hand out. And then they just put that splash pad in a couple of years ago, and we have so many parks on this base. I don't think I've ever seen so many playgrounds and parks before. More services and facilities. I did fact check this commissary number. I saved about 28% compared to Kroger, which is closer to my house. So it is cheaper. Yes, it is cheaper. And they will do special requests if you need. Just like the shopette, you can put in special requests for anything that they would normally have to. But the BX, I still buy my high dollar purchases there, if not other things. But they price match, sorry, because it's tax free. They price match, and they will, if they don't have it in the store, you can order it online and they'll ship it to the store for free, just like Walmart. The shopette is also tax free, and you can put in special orders. The CDC and the youth center, if you have kids there, then you should know. But otherwise, if it's a great place, to volunteer your time to be like a coach or a mentor or a tutor or something at the school age services at the youth center. But also their pay, if you have kids or if you're going to have kids in the CDC or the youth center, it's based on a tiered pay system that is based off of your off of your household income. So it doesn't matter. So based off of your household income. So for example, you saw what I make. So obviously I'm in the highest tier group, but even in the highest tier group, I pay about $125 for my daughter in the CDC. And as compared to off base, it's $125 for my daughter to go to a daycare off base too. However, for an airman, there was one just recently in FTAC. She has single family income, and she has one child at the CDC. It was a baby, and she said she was paying, I believe it was $65, might have been $70 a month. So you can see the huge difference. I'm glad she doesn't have to pay $125, but if she was going off base, she would be paying $125 just like everybody else. So here, like I said, the highest tier is about the same as off base, so it's very comparable. However, in Virginia, we were paying $240 a week for one kid. That hurt. Sometimes they will actually have a stipend for, it's usually just staff sergeants and below, so we didn't qualify, so we were paying $240 a week because the daycares on base were all full. So that hurt, but they do have a stipend for, it might be tech sergeants, but I know it's at least staff sergeants and below. They'll pay for the difference in the cost between on base and off base. And then space aid travel, if you ever had a chance to take a hop, it's a pretty cool experience. My son has traveled in a whole bunch of different types of military aircraft, but you get to travel free, usually free. You might have to pay for just the taxes, which might be like $12 or something like that, but otherwise it's free. You can go anywhere in the world that the aircraft are going as long as there is room. So you use the AMC website to do that. There are some rules involved with this, of course, but if you go to that website, it has all of those listed. You don't have to know this whole website. If you just go to amc.af.mil, you can navigate to this very easily. But this is just a picture of where all the terminals are. The closest one to here is Little Rock. So you can find that out. They do keep Facebook pages, and they're up to date, like to the minute. So if there's a change, you'll know about it. But it'll have information in the website will have information as far as what aircraft are going where, if there's room, how much room, if there's a wait list and things like that. So you could potentially take like a hop, we call it a hop, from Little Rock to like McChord Air Force Base in Washington State to Hawaii if you wanted to. And I did that scenario. I put that in there one time because I was sick of the rain, and it was going to cost my family of $12 to get to Hawaii, as compared to, I think it was $1,500 leaving out of Dallas per person. It's just a cool program. You'll notice a lot of retirees on these planes because this is what we're planning on doing when we retire. I don't know about you. All right, so that brings us into the personnel programs portion of this, and then we will be done. But I'm not going to go into too much detail on the retraining and the BOP programs and things like that. If you want more information on those, I have other recordings on assignments and on retraining. But just to I just want to make sure you know like when you're eligible and things like that. So one of the reasons that I am very happy you are supposed to attend this course 12 to 15 months prior to your date of separation is because your retraining window is about to come up. It's the 13th month prior to your date of separation. Now I say your DOS, but it's actually based on your time in service. So if you extend your enlistment, your retraining window does not extend with it. I get that question all the time. But it is based on this AFI. All of the information is in my PERS. There's a whole retraining section, and the top of the, I'll show you a picture in a second, but the whole top of the page does actually have all of this information. But you get to pick up to 5 jobs. It has to have a quota on the objective ends in the first term airman column. If you've made staff sergeant since then, maybe even tech sergeant, that's awesome. Congratulations, it's awesome. However, for this purpose, you are still a first term airman column and you're still gonna want to be able to use that FTA column, I promise. You do have to have an approved career job reservation. So if you try to apply early, or if you have a negative identifier on your record at that 35th or 59th month, you are not going to be eligible yet. You have to either wait for that negative identifier to fall off, or you have to wait until that 13th month. Okay, so a lot of people go to try to apply and they might be like a month off, so they're trying a month early. And it says they have not been selected under the selective reenlistment program, the SRP. And that means you haven't even been looked at yet as far as, are you eligible to reenlist? So once you are reviewed and you've received your reservation to reenlist, so you have an approved CJR, you are then eligible for retraining and BOP and some other programs. But how, like I said, if you have a negative identifier in your record, like you got a control roster or UIF, you have to wait for that identifier to go away. And then you need to call reenlistments and extensions and tell them you need to apply for a CJR. If you don't have a negative identifier and it still says, and you know that you're in your window and it still says that you don't have a CJR, let me know or call reenlistments and extensions and have them look into what's going on. Don't sit on it. You don't want anything going on in your records that will not allow you to reenlist. So for first term airmen, your career field release is not considered. So if your work center, so personnel, if your leadership, if anybody is telling you, oh, well, you can't leave because we're low manned, it doesn't matter. They don't even look at that. Your career field manager doesn't get a say or anything. It is not based on that. This is a huge retention tool. So if you're planning on getting out anyway, I'd rather put you in a different job that you might like more than just lose you altogether. So a lot of people find out that they weren't able to apply while they were in their window, or they didn't for whatever reason. If you are applying outside of your window, meaning afterwards, if it's due to a deployment, you don't need an exception to policy, you don't need permission or anything, as long as you apply in 45 days of your return. You just do a contact us, send an email to MyPERS, and boom, ask them to build your application and tell them what jobs you want. If there are other reasons within your control, like the most common ones I hear of are, I was planning on getting out and I changed my mind. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't like my options that were on the retraining advisory, or I had a negative identifier in my record. Those are reasons that are within your control. So you still need to do an exception to policy memo, and that your commander needs to sign that, and they will need to recommend you. If it's reasons outside of your control, like you were medically coded, pregnancy counts as medical code. However, you can retrain while you're pregnant. It just depends on when during the pregnancy. But if other reasons are, you had an assignment, because you're actually not eligible for retraining if you have an assignment. So you need to go on the assignment and then apply for retraining when you get to your next base. But you might be out of cycle at that point. So you would follow this process. Just fill in the blanks. Maybe you were, I don't know, just fill in the blanks. Maybe you had to take care of a family member that went through some medical procedures. It doesn't matter. So those are all outside of your control. So you still need to do an exception to policy memo, and you still need to route that to your commander for recommendation. But if they do not recommend, ask them to write why, and then you can still submit that up to AFPC for final approval. If you wait to apply till later in the month, or the process, because you do have 8 months to apply, that doesn't mean you have to finish the process in 8 months. It just means you have to start, like that initial application saying, hey, I'm interested, has to happen within the 8 months. But if you wait to do that till later, it is a 4 to 8 month process to go through this entire retraining process. So if you're going to eventually get to 6 to 4 months prior to your date of separation, and then the system's going to automatically code you that you're going to separate. So you'll have to extend if that happens. It'll be a 12-month extension. It's called for personal reasons, best interest of the Air Force. And it's just a 12-month extension. So, also, second to last thing on here, self-research. I underlined it. I cannot foot stomp this enough. It's great to ask people for help, especially if they went through the process and stuff. But before you use any of the information they're giving you, I'm not saying trust but verify. That's not the case here. Just fact check it to make sure it's still relevant. So it could have, the way that they described it to you could have completely and totally be 100% truth when they went through the process or when they researched it, but it could have changed since then. So I'm not saying trust but verify. I'm not saying that. I am saying get the information from them, ask them where they found that, and then go check it and see if it's still relevant. One thing that has changed in the last few months, if your AFSC is on the shortfall requirements list, it's actually called a shortfall requirements list. You still can retrain into other AFSCs. You do not have to use that shortfall listing anymore. It's basically obsolete. I wish they'd just take it down. So that was just first term airman retraining. So second term airmen are also required to attend this briefing. So I'm going to just cover this quickly too. Is that the process for applying is the same, the actual application process is the same, but eligibility and windows are totally different. So there's no more like window for you based on time in service or anything like that. You just have to find out if you're on this objective out listing or not. That's really what it comes down to. So phase 1 starts on or about August 1st, and only AFSCs and ranks listed in the objective outs will be eligible to apply at that time. So that means like if you're a tech sergeant in career field A and there's a quota in that box, then cool. Anybody, any tech sergeant in that AFSC can go ahead and apply for retraining if they want to. They still have to pick from the objectives ends at the top. It's only open for 30 days. So those applications all have to be in, usually just by the end of August. So just keep that in mind. The phase doesn't end until about December though. But so after the 30 days, they're gonna start plugging in volunteers into retraining slots. And then they'll email you and say, hey, we picked you for this one. We need all this documentation from you. And then phase 2 starts on or about December 1st, and that's the mandatory retraining phase. If they need to, the last 2 years, they skipped this phase because they had enough volunteers. But that's when they're gonna say, yep, you've been selected and we're gonna do this, so I need you to send me these documents. Phase 3 is then open season. It says in in my PERS it'll be on or about 1 February. However, if they skip phase 2, it will be adjusted. In 2019, it opened in December, and then in 2020, it opened in January. So, which would have been of the year prior. So phase 3 is it's open season. It's just like it sounds. It's for everybody else. So if you are on the objective outs, but you didn't apply in August, this is your chance to apply again, or another chance for you to apply. If you are not on the objective outs and you want to apply, this is your chance to apply. But if you do that and you're not on the objective outs, you have to supply an exception to policy memo, and it's called a balanced career field. You're basically just justifying why you should be allowed to leave your career field, and you need to pick an AFSC and explain why you would benefit the Air Force for you to go into that other AFSC. And that needs to be routed for your commander's recommendation as well. The timeline, if it does change, like I'd said, if they skip phase 2, sometimes they change the month. The timeline adjusts, they'll keep it updated. So you can actually go into that page and select the alert me, and you'll get notified every time there's a change. But this is what I was talking about in my PERS. All the information is there. So you might have an extenuating circumstance. I get that. We're not cookie cutter. Just let me know and we'll walk you through it. It's possible that somebody else is going through that and I already know what the process is for you and what you need to do. But if we don't, I have people, we can figure it out together. All right, so the little squares at the top there, those are the 2 main pages for first term airman retraining, the entire process, and then also the NCO retraining program, the whole process. The first arrow has all of the different ETPs in there that would explain like who's eligible, if there are any restrictions. For example, the security forces memo in there says that a second term airmen, because they had a lot of objective outs, are only allowed to retrain into CADM and K9. So even though you're in the objective out, you're restricted if you're security forces to just those other shreds. Medical has a lot of the same things. And then also it has, for your first term airmen, it has the exception to policies for career enlisted aviators. That's actually positive. It's going to allow people to retrain early to go into the CEA jobs. And then the second arrow is the apply for retraining. I'll explain that in just a second. If you don't know what you want to do though, the Air Force Work Interest Navigator, that third arrow on the right, it's a questionnaire. And then based on what you answer, it'll give you a list of AFSCs you might be interested in. It's actually how I found my new job when I retrained a long time ago. So it was a very helpful tool. All right, so when you hit the apply for retraining, it's going to look like this. It is in 2 boxes. It won't be 2 boxes. It'll be one fluid page on the screen. But so it has all those useful links at the top there. And then step 1 is just eligible, goes by the AFI. Step 2 is the retraining advisory, which is also on the main page. It's right above that 3rd arrow on the right there. But you can find it in here, the retraining advisory. That's the coveted list of AFSCs that are available. So this is what it would look like, but I'll come back to that in a second. Step 3 is the enlisted classification directory. That is a listing of all the AFSCs, what their roles and responsibilities are, and then all of the eligibility criteria. So before you select an AFSC from the retraining advisory and then apply for it, make sure you're eligible, please. And then please notice that in step 4, it says apply for retraining. It says the system will notify your commander that you have submitted an application, and then with more information. This means that if you're planning on retraining, please just notify your leadership so that they're not blindsided. You don't need permission, just notify them, let your supervision know that you're going to apply for retraining. And then you'll notice that the top under useful links, the 5th one down says request for retraining. That is actually where you go to continue the process in your application to apply. Anyway, so this is the online retraining advisory. The first term airman is circled right there. If you're a staff sergeant, tech sergeant, whatever, if you are a first term airman, you're going to use that column. You don't have to have all these AFSCs memorized. Just hover over one or click on it and the little yellow box will pop up. Pay attention to the advisory notes, please. They do have some restrictions in there too. For example, for 3F2 for training management, education and training, there are 3 codes in there. It says that you have to be at least senior airman. If you're first term airman, you cannot have no more than 7 years time in service. And then there's another one as well. I can't remember. All right, so for the NCR retraining program though, if you scroll down further on that the list, you'll come to these objective outs. So that is where the rank columns come into play. So for second term, you do have to pay attention to the rank column. And if you're on the objective outs, you go back up to the top and look through your rank column and find some objective ins. So once you hit that, the continue to apply, this is what it's going to look like. And I use myself as an example because it says that I'm not eligible, obviously, but it's not because I've been in so long. It's because my AFSC is not on the out listing and it's not eligible to re-enlist at all, or sorry, to retrain at all. So it tells you why you're not eligible. If you feel this is an error, give me a call if you need to. Otherwise, if you know it's an error or you have an exception to policy, like for example, if it says you're not in your window and you're going to apply with an ETP, well, cool, I already know that. So let's just keep going. So you hit the next button and then there are exceptions. And the second one there, it says eligible via a waiver. And that's, you're going to select that if you're applying with an ETP. And then you're going to upload your ETP in the next step, which I can't get to because I'm not eligible. But you just follow the prompts. Okay, so that was retraining. Real quickly over basic preference. So the eligibility for first term airmen, you just have to be on station for 8 months. Now that doesn't mean that you just get to come in as a brand new tech school student or something and just do 8 months and you can put in a BOP. No, it means that say you PCS here, you have to wait, and now you're going to be in your past there. Sorry, excuse me. You PCS'd in and you have an approved CJR. That means that you just have to wait 8 months time on station, and then you can apply for a BOP. So you could potentially leave another in 1 year after arriving. Now, if you came in and this is your first duty station, you have to wait until you have an approved CJR, so that 35th or 59th month, to apply for your basic preference. They do actually review the applications monthly for first term airmen, so that's pretty cool. So for second term airmen though, you do have to meet time on station requirements, which is for stateside, it's 4 years, and then basic preference is for stateside only. So you're going to have to wait until, I believe it's 42 months time on station to apply for your basic preference. If you're on a code 50, it's totally different. So if you find yourself in that situation and you don't already know the code 50 rules, just give me a call and I'll walk you through that too. For first term airman, manning at the losing location is not considered. So that's unfortunate truth here. People get discouraged because their BOPs aren't getting approved. All right. For first term airman, it's not because your shop here is low manned. It is because apparently there was not an open authorization for you at the gaining location. You may have put down highly desirable bases. I don't know. So it's just keep that in mind. Don't get too discouraged. And then for second term airmen, they do take into account the gaining and losing information. So if you, it just depends on your situation, I guess, in that, or your shop in that situation. But it has to do with Air Force average for your career field, or AFSC averages across the board. If you're applying for retraining, like I said, do retraining first and then your basic preference, because you're not eligible for retraining if you have an assignment. You do get a BOP request with a selected retraining selection. So just hold off and wait to do your BOP until afterwards. If you find yourself overseas when you're going to be in that, after you get your CJR, it's totally different. It's based off of your date that you're eligible to return. So contact your career advisor or just read my PERS and find out like when you should apply at that time. And I put everybody wants to go to Florida. So I mentioned a bit ago about maybe you put down highly desirable bases. I'm not saying you can't go to Florida. Somebody has to go to Florida. But just as an example, this was in 2018. And I'm still waiting to get an updated thing, but it's a perfect example. I doubt that it's changed much. So this is using staff sergeant authorizations. So if you look at Florida, it says 66, 67. So there are 6,600 staff sergeant authorizations in Florida. That's all AFSCs, all bases, but all just staff sergeants. And there were 24,000 volunteers. Okay, so again, I'm not saying you can't go to Florida, especially for a BOP. Put Florida down because you have a higher priority than just, the regular assignment system. But just keep in mind, if you really want to leave the base that you're at, then put that first. Put Florida as your number, or whatever bases of Florida as your number ones or two. But then try to find a different base. Think Midwest. Think not coastal. There are some really awesome bases in the middle of the United States. Little Rock is, I'm told, it's like a hidden gem as far as location and everything goes, travel goes. My first duty station was off at Air Force Base in Nebraska. I am from northern Wisconsin. I did not want to go to Nebraska. That was not on a list of goals that I had when I joined the Air Force to travel. However, it was an amazing location. I was 12 hours from everything. I mean, like, I could get anywhere in 12 hours. Omaha was a great little city. The base was beautiful. It had all the different things that you'd need. It was a really awesome location. And in fact, I had that on my dream sheet after I PCS out of there for a very long time, until I can't go there anymore. So just keep that in mind. I know people that are at Whiteman, other people that are at in Illinois and Wright Pat in Ohio, and they all really like those locations. So just don't limit yourself to coastal bases or things like that. All right, so just to cover some special duties that you may not have heard of, or just to go over the process. So special duty assignments, the process for these developmental special duties may change. However, the AFSCs are going to stay the same, right? The rank requirements will stay the same, all those types of things. But the process right now for the ones that are listed under developmental special duty process is basically through your chain of command. So the cool thing about being in a special duty, and I can say this from experience now, is that you're coded. You know when you're going to leave. So I have a code and I know that it is up on 1 June. So that means I am going back to my career field on 1 June. It makes it great for planning, family planning. And it's also great for the Air Force as far as projecting for needs. So we know how many MTIs are going to lose their code in the next 6 months, so they can project for how many they're going to need in the next 6 months. So it's a really great way to do that. So it becomes a quota, and they send that, they fair share that down to the MAGCOMs, down to the wings, down to the groups in the squadrons. And then your supervisors and your flight chiefs and them, they're filling in the spreadsheet saying, yes, this person would be great to be a recruiter, or this person would be great to be a PME instructor, not a PME instructor, an EMT or something like that. So if any of these are something that you would like to do, it would be very beneficial for you and your squadron to let your leadership know. Maybe on the back of your EPR, where you fill out what I want to do when I grow up, the 3 different roles and responsibilities for the future, you can put those in there. Like, I would like to be a recruiter. Cool. So put that in there, and then talk to your leadership. That's what, on your ACA, let your supervisors know, so that they're aware, and it'll help them out, because they're not trying to find somebody who wants to do it, or putting people in that don't want to do it. The local hire just means that it is not, you're not going to PCS. You're going to PCA, right? But you're not going to change bases. So you're going to PCA from whatever squadron and over to either FSS or CE, depending on which job you get. And 8 notice PME instructors on there for both DSD and local hire DSD. And that is because for the ALS school, the Airman Leadership School, those instructors are local hire only because there's one at mostly like almost every base. However, for NCOA and senior NCOA, there's only one senior NCOA, and then the NCOAs are, you know, not at every base. So those ones will get, you possibly will PCS for those ones. First sergeant is kind of a local hire process as well, but you can actually PCS while you're a first sergeant. If you are in these other ones, you're not going to PCS while you're in that position. All right, so other special duty assignments, I refer to these as Air Force special duties rather than developmental special duties. It's a different process for hiring, basically. So these ones are done in the assignment management system in AMS. And you just go in there, you have to go to the equal plus listing. It's literally the word equal and the word plus. And that's where they advertise for all of the special duties. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be the ones, the 8 series that you're seeing on this screen. It could be special duties within your own career field. For example, that is how they advertise for FTD instructors, for your tech school instructors, or any like odd for any position that has an odd requirement. For example, there was one for a training manager that was for a staff sergeant. It was to a little base in Spain. I've never heard of it before. It wasn't one of the normal ones that you hear of. And it was, they wanted the staff sergeant to already be Spanish speaking. Well, that makes complete sense, but it's not a normal requirement. So they put that into the special duty options. And so somebody can go right in there, and it said hit the button to apply, and there's a little button that says apply, and you just click that and it'll go off to the POC. But the 8 series ones you do have to go look for. And these ones are, a lot of people just aren't aware of them. So look through those. You can go to that enlisted classification directory that's listed at the bottom. If you do a MyPERS search for AFECD, for SPECAT, both of those are great, just huge a whole bunch of information are in those documents. But that AFECD is the one that's going to give you all the roles and responsibilities for each of the AFSCs. And then also, if you go to MyPERS assignments page, there's a PSDG at the bottom of that covers special duties as well. So this is another one that I just want to point out. If your AFSC is in the chart, the 724th Special Tactics Group they're always hiring. They always need people. They specifically always ask for comm and vehicle maintainers and vehicle operators, but they do need everybody that's on here. So you're doing your job, but you're supporting the AFSPEC or the battlefield airman personnel, but you're doing your job. You'll probably go to Pope to do an interview and some training and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean you're going to stay at Pope. Like, they'll put you at whatever group that they need you at. You do have to be a 7 level and the best of the best. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, take a screenshot or something. That email at the bottom, the SDS or the SD screening is how you get started. You just email them, and the very nice gentleman at the other end will probably look up everything about you, but then they'll get back to you. Okay, so OSI is considered retraining, but it's a completely and totally different process than everything I just explained to you. Everything they do is done in-house. I mean, everything. So when people call me and they say I'm interested in OSI, I honestly just give them the number to our local detachment. They have their own presentation and they'll talk to you and everything. But when you call them, they'll probably go through the presentation, but they're going to give you access to their enlisted recruiting portal. And that's, you have 45 days to get all of these documents filled out. And it's quite a list, I see that, but it's going to be tedious, but it's pretty standard documents. So at the same time, they're going to start going through those minimum qualifications and screening you. So it's for senior airmen through tech sergeant, but for senior airmen, you have to at least be at your 39th or 59th, or 35th or 59th month. So you have to at least be at your CJR. You have to have an approved CJR, but there's no end of window. It's not an 8-month window. So you can go through, so senior airmen through tech sergeants. If you are applying as a tech sergeant, you have to have less than 11 years time in service and less than 1 year time in grade. I'm sorry, for everybody, it's less than 11 years time in service, but for tech sergeants, it's less than 1 year time and grade as well. You do have to have at least 6 months remaining on your enlistment. So again, just like with regular retraining, if you come to that point, the system's going to automatically code you. So you'll end up you're going to have to extend if you want to continue the process. This is one of the reasons that you can apply outside of your window with an exception to policy, because if you go through this process takes longer than the normal retraining process. So if you're going through this and you're not selected, then you can still apply for regular retraining. You're just going to need an ETP if you're outside of your window. We have had pretty good luck here. In 2019, I think we had 12 people from the base selected, which is pretty high. But anyway, so they're going to go through this whole screening process. And then the pre-ASI screening that's where they're going to start, like really start questioning you, and you're going to fill out more information. And then there's another screening on top of that at a higher level. So this is the number and contact info for our local detachment here at Barksdale. They're used to it, that's how they get their people. But like I said, it's just all done in-house, just like their assignments and I believe promotions as well. So it's all done in-house. It's not done through like an AFPC process. All right, fourth question and final question. What was your biggest takeaway from this briefing? Additionally, if you think of anything that should be added, you could put that in there too, but it's not a requirement. Okay, so just a huge shout out to our SharePoint site. All of the ETPs that I've been talking about, there are examples for all of those on here. The briefing is going to be on SharePoint, the retrain, all the links and all those things, the slideshow deck, your slide decks, all of that is going to be on here. As well as the square thing under event registration. If you are interested in some professional or leadership development, that is where we list all of our classes that we have coming up, and you can go ahead and register right on that page. All right, so for course credit, I've been talking about this. Send an email to the org box. It's right there. And then in the email, put your rank and name, especially if you're sending it from a personal account. I don't know who John 424 is. I need to know who I actually am going to update. So put your rank and name in there as it would be shown on military records, and then answer the 4 questions that I asked during the briefing, and then any questions that you have. You can send an email to the org box from your personal email account. That is absolutely fine. But when we reply to you, we'll reply to your personal account, but we're probably gonna also CC your Air Force account too. Okay, so that concludes the briefing. I really appreciate you guys all taking the time to sit down and watch this. I know it's not ideal to have to watch any kind of briefing or even go to one, but this really is very important information to make sure you make the best decision for you and your family. That's our goal, is to just make sure that you do what you want to do and that you have a plan to do that, okay? So anyway, thank you. If you'd like to take an anonymous survey, you can do so using either the SurveyMonkey link or the QR code that is on the screen. Thank you.